Solution Talk, empowering Africa's entrepreneurs, catalyzing private investment for growth. Please welcome to the stage, Mavis Owusu-Gyamfi from African Center for Economic Transformation.
Good afternoon again. We can start now. So, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to moderate today's discussion on entrepreneurship. I'm Mavis Owusu-Gyamfi, as you know, and I am particularly excited about this session. I was here last year moderating this session, and when my colleagues at GIZ invited me to moderate another session, I was like, no. And then they said, but we are launching a new initiative. And I thought, progress. Yes, I will moderate this session. So from last year, where we heard a lot about the importance of innovative financing mechanisms, I'm really excited to say that as part of today's conversation, the GIZ will be launching a new financing mechanism. And it's an opportunity for us to interrogate them to see whether it will be fit for purpose in today's Africa. So before we do that, let me begin by introducing my esteemed panel. I'm not going to give you their bios. If you want their bios, go to the website. So if I can first ask by asking Anna Sophia Herken, Managing Director of GIZ, to join me.
Thank you.
Do you want to sit there?
I don't know.
Okay.
You want us to, okay.
You sit there then. Okay. And then, can I also invite my big sister, Obiageli Ezekwesili, or Obi, as we call her, Sister Obi, from Human Capital Africa, to join us.
I want to sit with Anna.
You're going to sit with Anna.
See,
See, they're already rebelling. Can you see that? Okay. And then, if I could invite my younger sister, Fadilah Tchoumba, to join us.
Can sit anywhere?
You can sit anywhere. And before you say this is gender unbalanced, okay, because I know somebody's going to say it, we've suffered it a lot, but you know, we are inclusive. I'd like to invite Eric Andrew, a youth ambassador from HSC, to join us. Where's young Eric? There you go. Okay, so thank you. Thank you very much.
one more.
For
Martin Ewald.
Oh, do we have?
Martin
Ewald, Hamburg Sustainability Platform. Martin, how could I forget you? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Forgive me, Martin. Okay, so let me start. Anna, let me start with you.
Yep.
So why have you decided to launch this new initiative to mobilize capital for African startups? And specifically, what pain points do you think this new initiative will address?
Actually, I have to say, before I started working for GIZ, I worked in venture capital for a large family endowment. And we did quite a lot of investments in Africa, but I always felt really sort of, it was uncertain, like there was no matchmaking. You know, there was high risk, and we did it because we were convinced, but we did it in a very chaotic way, to be honest, which was more like we felt something felt right, and then we went in. So this was something I really sort of thought, on the one hand, we don't have really systemized investment approaches, and then we see all the opportunities. And now my new role, when I'm traveling in Africa, and I met all these super insurtechs, fintechs, and all these entrepreneurs, all the innovation that we can sort of see also scaling on a global level, I thought there's such a big mismatch between what I would call we have a lot of pre-seed, and then we just launched Scaled, the former Hamburg Sustainability Platform, more for the big tickets from institutional investors. But there's this gap in the middle. Mm-hmm. And I just really feel that we need to do something. And we have risk. We have double risk because venture per se is a risky asset class. We have perceived risk. Mm-hmm. We have lack of matchmaking. And I know that we've been working on this so much, and everybody I talk to, they're like, oh, we've discussed this so many times. But only 1% of global VC goes into Africa, and I never take no as an answer. So I think this time we must make it right.
That's fantastic. So, Obi, if I may come to you. Anna talked about how less than 1% of global receipts go to Africa. Even worse is the percentage that go to women. So why do women have even less access to venture capital than their male counterparts? And what can we do about it? And Anna, I hope you are taking notes on Obi's answer to this, because he'll be key for the fund.
Anna doesn't even need to think anymore. We're constantly thinking about these issues. So, you know clearly that there are historical barriers that have made it much more difficult for women to enter into structured enterprise. And so most of Africa's economy and the informality that is known for really tells the story of women, because more than 70% of that informalized economy is women. And so when you think of the social barriers, the economic barriers, the just basic power dynamics of the political issues that stand in the way of access to policy, you think in terms of even productivity, because less girls in school and what that portends in terms of being networked to opportunities. So we know all of these issues, legal barriers that stand in the way of, just conceptualizing an idea and designing it into something that is profitable. And so with all of those problems, women have found themselves being the largest number of entrepreneurs with less access to the things that matter for entrepreneurship. And so what to do about it is the kind of solution you find. And I found, I saw my dear friend, I'm trying to remember her name. The first time that I had come to do a GIZ-related event was when she was Minister of Cooperation, Hadamarie. Yes. Because at that time, it was Partnership Fund with Africa that was what that was being talked about. And a women component had to do with it. And it was really about this matter of access to finance. And we know that designing the financing instruments for women that responds to the particular issues that they deal with. Just bland instrument of access to finance doesn't respond to the needs of women. Being able to identify the sectors in which they are more productive, in which you can more connect the solutions of finance to issues of capacity, issues of access to market, being very evidence-based in identifying what specific barriers those particular sets of women are facing. That is so important. So in West Africa, for example, we know that a lot of women, they don't even know whether government exists. Yeah. They have found themselves. Now, imagine what happens when all those legal issues, those technical issues that they struggle with and manage to overcome. Imagine that they were not there, the level of productivity and the kind of scale that you will see them operate at. So if you really want to design an instrument that works perfectly, my dear friend Anna, those women can tell us what they design should look like, because they already know what they're trying. They've designed something that's working. We now need to sort of help them get it in the form that really works within the kind of environment that operations like yours work.
So, and I'm going to come back to you in a second before I come to this side of the room. So recently we published a report at Asset. And I was absolutely heartbroken to read that women on the continent will not reach financial inclusion with men until 2093. Very shocking statistic. But one of the challenges we have with that statistic is perceptions of wealth. So I'm a very proud granddaughter of a West African woman. She was a market woman. And by all statistics, she was poor. Okay, she was a businesswoman. By all statistics, she was poor. But her definition of wealth was different from the formal definition of wealth. Okay, when she died and we opened her trunks, etc., the amount of kente cloth and Ankara cloth and gold and beads and whatever it is, trust me, the woman was not poor. So it's a definition of wealth which is also problematic and excludes these women. How can your facility take this kind of knowledge into account as you are thinking through the most excluded part of society when it comes to finance?
It's actually an interesting point, the definition part. And I think it's one of the things that we are trying sort of to identify what are the building blocks. So we have some macro building blocks, which are more like de-risking, and as you just discussed on scale, which are more on the financial sector part. But I think, again, you have to think from like A to Z, and this is exactly where it starts, to understand not only what's the definition of wealth, but also understand why did you have to find all this? Why are they not investing? Why are they not, it's also about digital literacy, financial literacy. So this is why it's important to include all these aspects in the new initiative.
That's helpful, thank you. And I saw you nodding a lot because you're...
Yes, because it's so correct. I mean, a lot of the women, because of these multiple barriers we talked about, they select a certain kind of behavior to respond to those things. Yeah. And so being able to analyze the kind of analytical understanding of the environment within which these women operate will feed into a design model that really responds to what they've been trying to overcome and what they've been pretending does not exist. Yeah. They found ways of escaping the barriers. I mean, think of a lot of the African great people you see. They've been raised on the money of these women we're talking about. These women, I mean, my mom was one of those kinds of women. My father was a public servant who would not compromise. I mean, like, put the gun to his head. He had no interest in any form of corruption. So she had to be strong entrepreneurially. And God knows all the barriers that she overcame in order to do that. So when you see the energy of the women in the market in Accra or in Lagos, you know clearly that there is something going on in Africa. I have 3 game changers for the continent. It's young people, it's women, and it's technology. And today, Africa's women in the marketplace are exhibiting that. The women, the technology part. And the more that the younger ones are entering into entrepreneurship, you will see even much more of that energy. So I think that this is one of the most brilliant things that you could be doing as GIZ right now, because I am past Africa as a humanitarian ground. For goodness sake. For goodness sake, and not for faith.
Thank you very much, Obi. So, Fadilah, my sister, Obi said that the future is young people, women, and technology, which sits right in your camp. So I have a question for you. Last week at the African Development Bank meetings, everybody was talking about financing from Africa for Africa. A lot of conversations around that. So tell me, what is the role of investors from Africa in financing startups in Africa?
First of all, I couldn't agree even more with what our leaders say. And women, youth, and local capital participation is extremely important for our own development. And I must say that working at ABAN as the CEO for the past 3 years, we have not stopped articulating that. And our whole, just to put you a little bit into context, ABAN is a community of more than 5,000 angel investors organized in 78 angel network in 37 African countries. And so far, we have deployed $35 million. And these $35 million have essentially set the foundation under which a lot of VCs have operated on the continent. There will not be a flatter wave or pay stack or Affinity Africa without the participation and the contribution of African business angels from Nigeria, from Kenya, from South Africa, from Egypt. These Africans have been the driving force towards attracting the additional capital that we have received on the continent. And this is what we have been saying all the time. Africans that are currently operating within Africa are the only instrument that will set that base. Let me put it a little bit into context. We're raising capital, scale capital, and we're saying we're going to deploy this scale capital on the continent. The truth is it will not be deployed. Why? Simply because there's no commercial capital that will come in to invest in ideas, which leaves us with Africans committing the first and initial capital to build that traction that will make it viable for VC companies and other funders to come on board. So today, I deeply believe, Mavis, that we can deploy 100 million on the continent. And this year is the perfect year, starting this year, that African can come together to accelerate the local participation in all these companies emerging, and specifically women, because they have proven that they can drive development on the continent. And we can only bet on them, right, with the contribution of men.
I like that. So everybody who believes that we can only bet on African female startups and the men, let's hear it. We got to hear it. Oh, you don't believe?
On all.
That's better. Okay. So, Martin, I'd like to come back to you. Fadilah talked about, African investors starting with the first risk. But very often, despite the work that organizations like ABAN are doing, we are still not seeing the matched fundings, the attractive fundings from international funders to match what they are doing and help them take it to scale. What will it take from the international community to partner with organizations like ABAN and others on the continent to really ensure that African startups not just have access to finance, but to the range of financial instruments they need to be able to grow? We've got to stop talking about Aliko and Strive. We've got to have at least 50 to 100 of those in the next 5 to 10 years if we are going to realize the ambition. And that cannot be done just by us. It has to be done globally. What will it take for you guys to join us?
That's literally the $10 billion question. But thanks for giving me that. And essentially, it's the question of connectivity and barriers. It's also barriers for finance. And I think it will start with the barriers for finance. So we need to find ways on how we can connect the growth on the continent, the entrepreneurs, like this value creation which is happening on the ground, with the capital markets we see in, let's say, Europe or also other parts of the world. And we've done a lot also in the past. Also the friends of KfW and DEG, where we started with Africa Grow, like in my former job, in order to really try to get this first stone rolling. And we had a bit of a pre-chat of friends where we've invested. And it shows that there is this entrepreneurial power. There are all the great solutions on the ground which need to grow, and then they need to come to a stage where they become investable by large-scale capital. And that's a bit of the barrier, which is also to a certain part intended, because there's regulation around what you can invest, how you can invest. And so essentially the thing, the equation we have to solve for is we need to find a way on how we can connect large-scale capital, regulated capital, with those founders on the ground. So we need a transmission engine or a box, whatever. And Anna referred to that. Coincidentally, we just launched 2 hours ago, Scaled, which is an initiative which shall institutionalize and industrialize blended finance. Because when we had the chat, you need predictability. If I scale up, how can I be invested into? Likewise, institutional investors need to know, what do I invest into? How does it look? If it needs to fit my box, and at the same time, it needs to fit the founder's box. And so this connectivity is something which we are working on. So we try to create connectivity from large-scale investors. And this is where GIZ also plays a crucial role, this capacity on the ground, this convening power, the relations. And those are the ingredients we need. But therefore, ultimately, we need to find this transmission engine. We're working towards that. And so hopefully next year we sit here again, and then you can see more activity having happened. But I can't promise.
I'll sit here. And I'd like to come back to you. So Martin talked about the transmission mechanism, the importance of bridging that gap between what Fadilah is doing and what global investors are doing. What role do you see for GIZ as a technical partner in helping to become or build those transition mechanisms?
I think what our role is certainly to work, first of all, as you just said, get the local needs, because we are working locally. So I think that's extremely important. But also we work on different levels. So for example, we advise on regulation. And if you look at like Tunisia had, I think, a startup act, I think they started in 18 or something.
Exactly.
And I saw like, was it 80% increase in startup funding? So I think the regulatory part is extremely important, but also advising financial institutions. And then we work on startup ecosystems. So on different levels, but always very locally. And I think this is also referring to what you just said. So we need to we are working on the local box and trying to see what would fit. And then we need the investors to sort of build the investment box and then just see how it fits together. And for me, the big question, and that's, again, like having both GIZ, but also my past VC head on, is why did we achieved VC areas where we are really successful. So KfW is really successful in what they do, but like on a global scale, what's sort of the missing part? And coming back to the scaled session, which we just launched, it was the same. We've been talking about private sector and capital mobilization for so many years. It's in every document of the World Bank, United Nations. But now we see with scale, for the first time, it seems to be happening. And to me, it's sometimes unclear what it needs to really sort of get going. And so that'd be really interesting to get your input. And like, what would it really need now to get this on a global scale?
We really need entrepreneurial governments. Yes. That's what we need. We need entrepreneurial governments. The biggest challenge is a mindset, a fixed mindset that makes people in politics and governance just sort of think of government as the solution to all things. They talk about private sector, but they act against private sector. And that just needs to change. So one of the key things would be that as we get these startup acts, to come into existence on the continent, even the young entrepreneurs need to understand that gone are the days when private sector just simply keeps quiet. So they have to have voice, because with voice, they can get government to do much more than merely passing the act. Oftentimes, they can pass the act and then act contrary to the act. So we do need agency, collective agency. Not, sometimes when you go alone, they can shoot the person. But a collective agency that says, these are the practical next steps that we need government to be doing to support us. The second part of it is, of course, that, even when startup acts are coming to existence, there are many moving parts to getting it to be fully executed. And so the whole implementation plan of those acts can sometimes be missing. That aspect requires a lot of hand-holding and technical advisory. A third part of it in getting this to permeate the way that government thinks is to use data. We've got to invest very much in the data that tells the story of how much more jobs will come from just unlocking the possibilities that are currently stranded by a lack of, leadership of this process by government. And my fourth and final point on this matter, because, the whole enabling for this really lies very much with government. It's every time I see people sort of, say private sector, I say even the bastion of capitalism knew that it needed effective governance in order to do well. All right? So that's why the markets respond to what happens on Capitol Hill, right? So spare me the idea that all we need is private sector. Effective governance is key. And so just ensuring that there there is attention being given to just basic effectiveness and efficiency, accountability of governance. That is an important part of private sector doing well. And so many more Africans need to be interested in that, because those who say that politics is beneath them will be ruled by their inferiors, and often your inferiors won't care about decent money-making activities, because after all, there is a different way of making money quickly without putting effort, and that is corruption.
Definitely. So that was a very clear message to the young Africans in the room. When you are called, don't say, I'm too busy. Because what happens is what Obi just said. Okay, so Eric, you've been listening. Now, Obi just said to us, Sister Obi, or Auntie Obi to you, I don't know. Yeah. Just said to us that, all of this is going to require young people to articulate their concerns. It's going to require young people to hold their leaders to account. And you are a team lead for AgrofixiNG in Nigeria. Okay. I would love to hear your views on what you've heard thus far. Do you think it's going to help fix the financial challenge that you have seen thus far in Nigeria, or talking to your peers, what you've heard thus far?
Okay. I can talk without the mic.
Yeah, it's not working?
Okay.
So I'm changing the rules and confusing everything. My apologies.
No problem. Thank you for the privilege to be Mr. Giants of Africa, and also GIZ and HSC. Yeah, thank you. Very interesting conversation going on, and very big roadmap. But then let me speak from the point of young people, right? So will this work? I believe it will work. But also, I think there are two things I would actually like to just speak to. When there are financing models, especially from development organizations and all, I think one of the problems that we would see is that young people are not treated as investments. It's just like a demographic group that we just want to tick boxes and just indicators being measured. And so you see, just we've given a fraction of this financing to young people for their startups and all. But then at the end of the day, really, it's not about whether or not so they become just ticks. And I think I would like to just borrow from the words of the Kenyan minister that opened, and she said, social topics must be treated as an investment. And so when you invest in young people, it is because these are the future of Africa's generation, where the present and where the future, permit me to use that. So that is one. And also, when you want to give money to young people, I think one of the things that also needs to be really spoken of is flexible financing. So because when you pledge a lot of money, it works a lot with systems. And so one of the things is that as a very young entrepreneur, I have seen that entrepreneurship is not straight. And so sometimes when there are money from models that are given to businesses, people are able to apply and all. One of the things that should work is that it should be a little bit flexible, because when a young person has a plan and everything and he presents it, sometimes when he goes to the field, it's not always the same way. And so they might actually need to make little adaptation and changes. But then at the end of the day, you see, when you've already pledged some of this, when there's already a lot of paperwork, which entrepreneurship is really not always the paperwork way. And so one of the things that happen is that you see young people having to just run with the entire paper and framework, which doesn't always work. And then you see then there is a problem that, Africa, young people, it doesn't always bring out what's written. And so for me, I think those are some of the ways. And then, we have to just continue talking about the risk and ventures for Africans, and also also working with the African government a lot, and also because a lot of we have seen more young people involved in the past few years than we have seen. But also one of the issues I would also reiterate is that most of the times it's just for demographic checklist, and that is all. But yes, it will work. Very fantastic conversation and very amazing plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. So get your questions ready.
There's something that I missed out.
Yeah.
And that is that in all of these initiatives, a very important role that government really does play is there is a subsidy aspect where the private sector won't be the ones coming to the table to deal with them. But the issue is how efficient is that aspect of the subsidy meaning those areas that market cannot address. Those aspects, how do we get the financing that deals with it without it becoming a potpourri for some corrupt politicians to ferret away out of that money, and then it ends up being, oh, so much was budgeted for innovation fund, but you saw nothing, that really innovated itself. And so that matter of efficient subsidy to address aspects that need to be addressed in order to prepare those businesses for the kind of scale that we're aiming for. We have to figure out how those kinds of efficiencies can come into play. And then a new definition of risk.
Yeah.
I've been asking the world to define risk differently since it turned out that risk was in New York, risk was in London, risk was in Berlin, risk was not in Nigeria. When the global financial and economic crisis happened, we then saw that actually there is much more risk around your capitals than exist. And so this whole perception penalty that Africa pays in terms of, oh my goodness, the penalty, the perception penalty that Africa pays in terms of definition of risk is something we need to go back to the table. And through this kind of initiative, it's important to ask the most important questions. How are we defining risk? How are we defining it? Because traditional definition of risk that we have carried in all these decades will again not allow us to be as bold as we could be, even with this kind of an initiative.
So, Fadilah, how do you guys define risk?
For sure, we don't speculate on it.
You don't speculate on it?
We don't.
Okay.
We see it.
You see it.
And it's not really about risk. We don't even talk about risk. Because the moment you think about innovation, the moment you think about supporting entrepreneurs that are building solutions that will impact people at a scalable kind of framework, we don't even see risk. We rather see, how do we make this work, right? And now you're talking about financial support and non-financial support. So the non-financial support comes in the form of innovation hub, incubator, accelerator program that we have seen being implemented on the continent. And one of the biggest examples that is being done right now on the continent at scale is the Timbuktu initiative. And you do also have AfriLabs supporting innovation hubs and innovation center that are building these ideas. And once those ideas are built, they reach a stage where we call them MVP. They have reached a minimum viable product. When you have a minimum viable product, you can now attract early stage investment, starting with business angels. So really what we need to understand, right, and that what we really need to push forward is how do we truly build a pipeline of investable company on the continent at scale, looking at startups, tech companies, and tech-enabled SMEs. Because we have to be honest with ourselves. On the continent, we still have about 80% that are SMEs. And we need to make sure that we can leverage technology to make those SMEs as efficient as possible. But we do also have tech companies that have been developed. How do we define or design a financing mechanism that would accelerate the participation of local capital? And 2 years ago, we tried something out. A lot of people were skeptical about it. And from a statistical background, I say, you know what? We need to create an incentive. If we create an incentive, I can guarantee you that Africans will participate with their money and with the other non-financial resources. We created what we call Catalyzing Africa, which is a matching fund instrument. And I went out, we shopped around, very kind people were able to give us $1.5 million. With $1.5 million, and I say to all the angel investors on the continent, if you put $20,000 in a company, we would double it.
Did you hear that?
Within, thank you. Within 12 months, we had a participation of 200 business angels across the continent, putting together $2.5 million. It's working. So which means that if we get $10 million today, I can almost guarantee that we can actually raise about $30 million from Africans' pocket with the participation of about, let's say, 5,000 angel investors. That's one thing. The other thing we have worked on, which is also proving to be working, is we have a lot of companies today that are domiciled in Delaware. And our ministers of finance need to understand that, well, you think you have money on the continent? No, it's sitting somewhere in the US. And we say, what are the alternatives that we can work on? The first is leveraging on our financial kind of infrastructure that we do have. Mauritius has been extremely popular and has really helped facilitate the flow of capital. But we also have Rwanda, where we tried out the cross-border investment facility. We set up this cross-border facility in Rwanda, and we tested it out and say, you know what? Any investor that sends the money to Rwanda, we can keep it in dollars and euros and invest in a company based anywhere on the continent. And it worked. So when it comes to policies, we say ABAN will remain as practical as possible. And today we're working on the African accreditation framework, where that accreditation would unlock a tax rebate. Well, it would be quite challenging because of the how big the continent is and how we have to convince every single minister of finance to buy into this idea. But I can agree even more that government needs to play a role to accelerate the participation of local capital.
Thank you. So very quickly, I have a quick question for you, then I wanted to open it up to the audience. So listening to Eric, Obi, and Fadilah, I'm struck by one thing, blended finance. We talk about blended finance all the time, and yet we haven't seen blended finance at scale. Where is blended finance working, and what is making it work? If any. It's okay to say none.
I like the way you ask. Yeah, we see blended finance working. I think also we just got some examples of trying to make it easier, universally applicable. So Mauritius, like standardized structures. And I think blended finance is a tool which can scale up, so which can become larger scale, but therefore we need larger lending strips. And this is where the entrepreneurs are in, like really trying to create that lending strip so that blended finance can do more. And that's where we're heading. But of course, there are plenty of examples on the ground already, but we need more, and we need more systematic approach, and we need more of a broader landing zone. And then we can also see more of such vehicles.
Thank you. Now I'd like to open it up to the audience. So before I turn to the audience, I just want to let you know that if your question is too long, I suffer from a coughing fit. So quick question to the point, or quick comment to the point. So I'm going to start with the young people. I saw a young lady's hand up somewhere. There, and there. So yeah, I'll come to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be super quick.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this panel because it really resonates. My name is Yara. I'm Egyptian. And I have a startup with a minimum viable product, which is this one. It's made from recycled plastic bags and plastic bottles and car tires. We've been in business for 10 years, and it has been suffocating in the start. We started in Hamburg, by the way. I was a fellow in an accelerator in Hamburg, and then I came back to Egypt full of power that I'm going to change my society and empower women. From 2015 until 2018, it was a killer, literally, because there wasn't entrepreneurial governments that did not make entrepreneurial customers and did not make entrepreneurial private sectors. So we were betting on our time, on our health, that at some point it's going to happen. And it did happen, and after 10 years, we're now working with 120 women, supporting them. And we've upcycled more than 5 million plastic waste that is reducing almost 3,000 carbon dioxide emissions. We're ready for investment, I believe.
Okay.
What a great pitch. Great pitch.
Why that guy?
She made a great pitch.
Yeah.
Yes. Hello, my name is Leonard Adomako, and I'm a co-founder of IDEA, a startup hub supporting Black founders and founders of African descent here in Germany. Actually, we are located in Hamburg. And we have some programs here. We're working with Google, with LinkedIn, with different companies, but we have different programs as well, connecting the ecosystems. Sorry?
I'm watching the time.
I'm fast.
Okay.
So connecting the African and the German innovation ecosystem. And my question basically is, how are you actually, as ABAN, connecting to the diaspora? Because there we see diaspora is like 5% of foreign direct investment into Africa. 5% of the GDP of whole Africa. It's like 90 billion officially, which is quite a sum. And if we could leverage some of it into startup investment, into VC, that could be something. So have you thought about it, or are you actively participating?
Yes or no?
You are, yeah, it's a big yes. We have thought about it. Do you want me to answer it now?
Yes, please.
Oh, absolutely. We have thought about it. And we cannot, the amount of capital that can be actually deployed from the diaspora into the continent is undeniable huge, and it can have a really huge impact. But you sitting in the diaspora is very simple. We have the instruments, and say we on the continent, we have multiple SPVs. You can either use it as, let's say, as an individual investor, or come in as an institutional investor, where you bundle a number of angel investors in your community and then link it up with us. The advantage you have is that you will be following us, right? Who will be initiating the due diligence? You essentially invest because we're investing, because we do have the local knowledge, right? We can easily provide any information that is much needed. And I can share the framework with you. I would be more than happy to see how we can work with you. We're already working with the European Business Angel Network, as well as the diaspora in the US. And they have been playing a very important role in increasing the capital amount that we attract on a yearly basis.
They gave me a very strict timeline. 3 minutes, I have to wrap up. So
okay, thank you so much. So my question is to GIZ. Is one thing to launch financial instruments, is another thing to assess it. During the NICOP project, I worked with GIZ on the NICOP projects, and for the many women that assessed some of the funding instruments available, I personally and my team applied for those grants, debts, and all of that for them. So now that we have this financial instrument, what are the plans? Or do you guys have any plan to ease the assessment of this, financial instrument available? Most usually on the technical, technicalities, all of those things surrounding assessing those finances, so that we don't just launch, financial instrument that most of those women, usually not the said communities,
that was said don't
afford.
Stop. So at this point,
can I just?
Yes.
It's an excellent point. We take it after this. We will have like a workshop on this, and these are exactly the inputs that we need. Sort of like, what should we look at?
So Sophie, can I use this opportunity for you to launch the program formally?
So
launch it formally.
No, so we will launch the Innovative Capital Mobilization for Africa initiative, and we will actually after this have a roundtable, a workshop, because like many of you approached me and said, we don't just want to talk, we want to act. And this is exactly what you want to do. We want to take all your input now and discuss afterwards and really go into sort of action mode and come up with viable solutions.
So where's the ribbon?
Well, that's the workshop.
Yes.
He's Mr. Initiative. It's
Yeah.
Uli.
Is that Uli?
So where will be the workshop?
So we literally are running out of time. And if I try, you've all been invited.
You're already,
everybody's
invited
to come.
We need your input because we really need to.
Tell them time.
So if, in case next year we are launching something, I want them to invite me to moderate. So I've got to stick to the time. So forgive me. Before we wrap up, I'd like each of you to offer Anna one thing you will do to make ICAMA a success. Martin.
I would try to work on this connects to larger capital market.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's good.
Brilliant. Fadilah?
We'll try to commit at least 10% of the capital amount that you bring.
Brilliant. Sister Obi?
I will knock the governments.
On that note, thank you very much. Anybody who wants to join the next session and hasn't had the invitation, you know who to go to for further questions. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Steigenberger.
And thank you very much for making time to join us today. I'm sorry I didn't have enough time to take all your questions. My sincere apologies, and enjoy the rest of HSC. I'd like to encourage all the panelists to stay for just a few minutes, and everybody else, go.
No.
Very good.